In this video series, I'm going to demonstrate how to create an Autocad template from beginning to end. And um, the idea behind an Autocad template is that it allows you to start a new drawing um, with the template that you create, but the template contains settings that you would generally use, or layers that you would generally use, or a title block that you like to use commonly. And you don't have to recreate that every time that you start a new drawing if you start a new drawing with the template that you create. So it saves you a tremendous amount of work, and so we definitely want to take advantage of that feature. So we'll go ahead and create a template, and we're going to start off creating this template with a template that we've already used, the acad.dwt. If you remember in previous videos, I said this was just a blank template with one layer, and that's what we want to start off with. So I'll just go to New, and depending on your startup system variable, you may or may not see this dialog box, but we want to select acad.dwt as our starting point, as I mentioned, and we're quickly ushered into the drawing environment. Okay, so you'll notice even though the file that we started with had a DWT extension, immediately up here, and I didn't mention this before, but you'll see that we're given a drawing, and yours, if you just started, it probably says drawing1.dwg. The number doesn't matter, but what I want to point out is that we're working all of a sudden with a DWG file extension, which is an AutoCAD drawing file. Okay, and that's how the templates work. As soon as you start a drawing from a template, the file is converted from a DWT to a DWG. Okay, but as far as our template creation is concerned, we're going to create everything in this DWG, and then when we get to the end, we'll save it as a DWT. Okay, with our new settings. Okay, so the first thing I mentioned that there are common settings that if you use them all the time, you want to put them in a template, or common layers that you use all the time, you want to put them in a template, or a title block, and we're going to cover all those. But before I forget, let me add. There's a setting that I want to change right off the bat. Okay, before I forget it, because everything else is in a easier to get to place, but this one can easily be forgotten. So let's type in mleader style, all one word, mleader style, and then enter in the command prompt area. And you should see this screen. Under standard, go to modify, and under text height, change this to 0.125, and then OK. And that's one setting changed, and we'll be doing a few of these as we go along, but I wanted to not forget that one. Okay, so the next thing I want to work on is layers. Okay, layers are very important because the layers themselves contain a lot of information. Okay, so there's some things I need to I'll tell you what, let me show you a template that I've already created so you can see the layers that you will also need to create. And you can open the Layer Properties Manager either by pressing this button on the Layers panel of the Home tab, or you can just type Layer, L-A-Y-E-R, in the command prompt area, followed by pressing Enter on your keyboard. And these are all the layers that you will need to create. Now, you've already done some layer creation. There are a couple of things I need to warn you about. For example, the center line type and the Phantom 2 line type, you may have trouble finding those. So what I'm going to do, this layer I'm about to create, don't put it in your template, but I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes to show you how to create the center line type, and you'll do something similar for the Phantom 2. So actually, let me go back over. Let me go back to the blank template so I can look at this as if you guys were. So if I wanted to create a center layer, the color will be cyan. By the way, you should always use these colors here, which are your primary colors, instead of these. These are kind of secondary, so always try to create your colors out of this list. But anyway, cyan, which is color 4, and the default line type that it's given me is continuous. I need to change that. And if I click on that, Oh, actually, Phantom 2 is already created. So you'll have to find the hidden line type. I mentioned Phantom 2, but essentially the hidden is the ones you're going to have to locate. But what you want to do is select Load, and then you'll have a long list of line types that you can use. And go down and select Center, and then OK. And then select Center from the list, highlight it, and then select OK. And you'll see that now Center is my current line type. And you can also, change the line weight, okay, as we've done before. And you just work your way down the list. And let me go back to the template I've already created, and so we can look at those layers. Okay, so here's the layers that you'll need to create. You'll need to make sure that you assign the correct color, line type, line weight. For the viewports layer, you want to make sure that you can see a red mark through the printer icon here, and what that does is that makes the viewports layer visible. You can see it, but it won't print out. Okay, so that's like a no print icon that you see here. The rest of these layers will print out. Be aware of the line weights here on the visible and text layers, and just work your way down the list and create those layers. Okay, so one more thing I want to mention about layers I haven't mentioned in the past is the on, freeze, and lock. And there's some subtle differences between these three, and on and off is what you'll use most often. Freeze and thaw, it is useful, but for the complexity of the drawings that we have, it's not as useful. And then lock, and the difference is that on and off makes a layer visible or not visible. Okay, so for example, if I were to make my current layer visible, or make the visible layer my current layer, and draw a line, for example, and let me just I'll do another one in the hidden layer, and let's say I want to turn one or both off. Okay, I can use this drop down. By the way, hidden is my current layer, but I can turn the visible layer off, and you can see that it removes it from the drawing, but it's not erased. I can turn it back on. I can freeze it. I can thaw it by clicking it again, and I can lock the layer and unlock the layer. Okay, so on off is something that you will use, and what that allows you to do is to make the layer invisible, basically. Okay, so a common use that I'll have you do is, for example, a lot of times I want to see your construction, or how you came about a drawing by looking at your construction lines. I don't want you to erase those from the drawings usually, and because I want to be able to see your work. So if you create the construction lines or circles or what have you on the construction layer, you can turn them off for your submittal, but if I want to look at your work, I can turn the layer on without them being erased. So that's a good use for on and off in this class. Freeze and thaw, this is really a performance thing. If you have a very, very complex drawing, sometimes you'll want to freeze a layer because it helps speed up your zooming and your drawing regeneration and that sort of thing. But our drawings really don't get that complex. For example, when I worked in field, I sometimes worked in drawings that had over 1,000 layers and a lot of different line work and things like that. So freeze and thaw was useful, more useful for that. Lock and unlock, this keeps you from editing keeps you from editing a locked layer if one's locked or unlocked. Okay, so that's a kind of a breakdown on the layer situation, but this is a list of the layers that you need to create for your template. Make sure that you do all the settings.